Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to mess with the timeline just a little bit. I want to take you out of the present day, out of your car or your kitchen and drop you somewhere else.
We're going forward in time, which is always fun.
We are. I want you to imagine it's the year 2026. You're in this massive crowd, maybe it's a stadium, maybe a huge warehouse, and the bass is just rattling your rib cage.
Mm-hmm.
But you realize this music, this relentless mechanical beat, it's not some niche subculture anymore. It's been over 35 years since techno was born in Detroit. And somehow, in 2026, it is bigger than ever.
It's almost become the pop music of the future. In a really specific, intense way, I mean.
Exactly. We are talking, of course, about techno. And to navigate this future landscape, we're doing a deep dive into a really specific source today. We're looking at the season finale of a documentary series from 786Muzik called the Techno Story.
And we're focused on episode 5, the last one, titled simply The Future. And it's a great piece because it doesn't just treat this as, entertainment. It treats techno as a lens to look at how technology, culture, even climate change are reshaping things. It's surprisingly deep.
So our mission today is to understand not just what techno sounds like in 2026, but how the whole vibe is holding up. We're going to look at how a genre from sweaty basements became a global empire.
And looking at our roadmap, we've got some heavy topics. We're talking business techno, the role of AI in the studio, which is a huge deal in 2026, and this revolution in spatial audio.
And we'll get to the big philosophical question, will the 909 kick ever die?
I hope not.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the landscape. The first thing that really hit me in the doc is just the sheer scale. It describes this massive divide in the scene.
It's less of a war and more, a stratification. And you really have to get this to understand the modern ecosystem. The source uses a term that's been bubbling up for years, business techno.
Business techno. It sounds like an oxymoron, like corporate anarchy.
It does, doesn't it? But just think about the scale. Back in the 90s, techno was rave culture. Illegal warehouses, By 2026, the doc points to names like Charlotte de Witte, Amelie Lens, Beyer.
These aren't just DJs anymore, they're stadium acts.
Exactly. The documentary talks about pyrotechnics, massive LED walls, light shows that could rival a Super Bowl halftime show. It's a full-on spectacle.
And that's business techno.
That's it. It's polished, high production, and it generates a ton of revenue. It's a commercial product built for mass consumption. It's efficient. It works on the social platforms of 2026, short breakdowns, huge drops, instant gratification.
But here's my question. Usually when a genre goes that big, when it goes stadium, the original spirit just dies. Did the underground just get wiped out?
And that's the fascinating part. The documentary argues absolutely not. In fact, the commercial explosion might have actually saved the underground.
Wait, really? How does that work? Usually the big fish eats the little fish.
Not here. They highlight this thriving, gritty underground scene running parallel.
Yeah.
They talk about artists like DJ Stingray 313, who's been around forever, Object, Paula Temple. These guys aren't doing pyrotechnics.
Okay.
They're in the dark, pushing the sonic boundaries, playing faster, harder, weirder music.
I love the name DJ Stingray 313, by the way. Sounds like a cyberpunk character.
He kind of is.
Yeah.
But the expert in the doc, James Sullivan, he argues these two worlds, business techno and the underground, are symbiotic. They need each other.
So the business side brings in the new fans.
Precisely. Imagine a 19-year-old in 2026. They go to a festival, they see a huge set with fireworks, they fall in love with the energy, they're hooked.
It's the gateway drug.
It is.
Yeah.
Then, after a year or two, they start digging, they get bored of the big hits, they go looking for something darker, something weirder, and that leads them to the underground.
Yeah.
The stadium pays the bills, but the basement is where the R&D happens.
That's a really refreshing take. It's not just sellouts versus purists. It's an ecosystem.
You got it. You can have the stadium anthems and the dark experiments happening in the same city on the same night.
Okay, so the scene is huge, but let's talk about how the beats are actually made, because you can't talk about 2026 without the elephant in the room. Artificial intelligence.
It is the defining tech of the era, for sure.
And the documentary tackles this head on. I was kind of expecting a dystopian take, the robots replace the artists, but that's not really what's happening, is it?
No, and this is where we need some nuance. The source is very specific. In 2026, AI isn't the artist. It's the assistant.
Break that down for us. Does that mean a producer is just typing a prompt like, make me a hit song?
Not for the serious artists, no. Think about what techno is at its core. It's repetitive, it's loops, patterns, polyrhythms. It's basically math.
It's a grid. That's why it's hypnotic.
Exactly. And AI is incredibly good at math and patterns. So a producer in 2026 might use an AI tool to say, generate 50 variations of this hi-hat loop at 135 BPM. The AI does in seconds what used to take hours of manual programming.
So it just handles the grunt work, the boring stuff.
It handles the tedious parts, it can suggest arrangements, design complex sounds, but, and this is the huge but in the documentary, the soul factor is still human.
Define soul here, because that sounds a little vague when we're talking about robots.
It's about curation. It's about intent. An AI can make 1,000 loops, but it doesn't know which one gives you that specific tension in your stomach. Only a human understands that feeling. So the human becomes the architect, choosing the bricks the AI made.
I like that analogy. The AI fires the clay, but the human builds the house.
Correct. The doc emphasizes that while the barrier to entry is lower, anyone can make a beat, the barrier to greatness is probably higher. You have to have better taste because the tools are everywhere. They need a vision.
That's actually a really optimistic take on AI. It forces the human to focus on the feeling, not just the programming.
It frees up brain space for creativity.
Now, while the production is getting smarter, the way we actually hear the music is changing too. Physically, the doc spends a lot of time on the spatial audio revolution.
This is huge. For 50 years, basically, we've lived in stereo, less speaker, right speaker.
Two-dimensional, flat.
Right. But in 2026, the standard for high-end clubs is becoming immersive, 3D audio. We're talking systems like Dolby Atmos, but on steroids, built for clubs.
The description in the source is wild. It says, imagine the kick drum space centered in your chest, but the percussion circles your head, and the synths rain down from the ceiling.
It turns the club into an actual environment. You're not just facing a stage. You are inside the sound.
And they mentioned Bergen is doing this, right?
Yes, Bergen in Berlin, the temple of techno. They're experimenting with these spatial setups, and usually where Bergen leads, the world follows.
It sounds disorienting.
In the best way possible.
Yeah.
It lets producers use space as an instrument. A sound can feel far away or right behind your ear. It adds this whole psychedelic layer. The doc says it even changes how people dance.
So AI builds the tracks, 3D systems change how we hear them, but what about the performance? There was always that criticism of electronic music, it's just a guy pressing play.
The checking emails syndrome. Yeah, that was a thing in the 2010s.
But the documentary says that line between DJing and live performance is really blurring.
This is the rise of the hybrid set. It's a major shift in performance culture they point to.
What's the difference between a hybrid set and just DJing?
Okay, a traditional DJ mixes 2 pre-recorded tracks. A live act plays their own music on synths. A hybrid set is in the middle. You're playing tracks, but you also have a drum machine, a sampler, effects.
So you're remixing everything in real time, creating something new on the fly.
You're deconstructing it. The source mentions artists like Amelie Lens, VTSS, and I Hate Models are famous for this. And the reason it matters is one word: risk.
Risk.
If you press play on a player, it works. It's safe. But if you're running 5 machines and a laptop, things can go wrong. The tempo can drift, gear can crash. It brings this level of danger back to the stage.
So your ticket is worth it. You're seeing something that will never happen again in exactly the same way.
Exactly. It fights against that polished business techno perfection. It adds the grit back in. The sweat, the mistakes, the improvisation.
Speaking of grit, the genre itself seems to be eating everything else. The source talks about genre fusion. Techno used to be so purist.
Oh, the techno police were very real. If you played a track with a big melody, you were out. But by 2026, the walls are just gone. The doc lists some popular combinations.
Yeah, let's run through them. Techno plus trance.
That's the Charlotte de Witte influence. You get these big, emotional, euphoric melodies over a hard, fast techno kick. It triggers that hands-in-the-air emotional release.
Techno plus industrial.
Artists like Rebecca and Dax J. This is the sound of a steel mill. Distorted, metallic, aggressive. It's physical. It's for letting out anger.
And even techno plus breaks, or techno plus IDM.
Which is that experimental, glitchy stuff. The big takeaway is that techno isn't a box anymore. It's an umbrella. As long as it has that forward momentum, you can throw anything in the pot.
It's survival of the fittest. It absorbs what works. But, and here's the reality check. We talked about massive festivals, global flights, huge LED walls. All of this comes with a cost. The source brings up sustainability.
It does. And honestly, it's about time. You can't have a genre that calls itself futuristic while burning jet fuel every weekend.
Yeah.
The carbon footprint of the touring DJ circuit is just massive.
DJs flying private jets to play 3 festivals in 24 hours. That was a status symbol.
It was. And then you have the power for the sound systems, the servers for streaming. The doc asks, how does this survive in a climate-conscious 2026?
What's the industry doing about it? Is it just greenwashing?
The source suggests there are real changes happening. They list solar-powered festivals becoming the norm, not the exception. They talk about green riders, where artists demand carbon offsets for travel in their contracts.
And eco-conscious production for the gear itself.
Right. It's an existential necessity. If the environment collapses, there are no dance floors. Sustainability isn't a political stance anymore. It's a survival strategy.
That makes sense. It's adaptation. Which brings us to the big philosophical conclusion of the episode. The host asked the expert a very direct question. Will techno even exist in another 50 years?
And the answer was a resounding yes. But the reasoning is what I found really profound. It wasn't just, oh, people like to dance.
So what was the argument?
He explains that techno isn't just a style of music. It is essentially music about the relationship between humans and machines.
That's deep.
I mean, think about it. We live in a world dominated by algorithms and screens and automation. Techno is the soundtrack to that. It mimics the repetition of the factory, the pulse of the data center. As long as we coexist with machines, techno will be relevant because it reflects our reality back to us.
It's the folk music of the computer age.
That's a perfect way to put it. And they use a very specific image to anchor this whole idea, the 909 kick.
Ah, yes, the Roland TR 909.
For anyone who doesn't know, it's a drum machine from 1983. It was a commercial failure because it didn't sound like real drums. But that thud, 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 kick drum sound, it became the literal foundation of house and techno.
And in 2026, we're still listening to it.
We aren't just listening to it, we're like worshiping it. The doc describes it as a machine pulse that taps into something fundamental in our brain. It's the heartbeat of modernity, primal and futuristic at the same time.
It's incredible that a piece of plastic from the 80s defines the sound of the future. It's like the Stradivarius of electronic music.
It proves that technology doesn't age if the feeling it creates is timeless.
So we've covered a lot of ground. And since we're looking at a series finale, it's probably helpful to just zoom out for a second. The documentary The Techno Story had 5 episodes.
Right. Just to recap the journey, episode 1 was the Detroit origins, the Belleville 3. Episode 2 was the European explosion, Berlin and the UK. Episode 3 broke down the subgenres.
Episode 4 was that battle between underground and commercial we talked about. And today's topic, episode 5, the future.
Yeah, it's a really comprehensive look. But if we boil it all down, the final takeaway for 2026 is this. Techno is AI-assisted, it's spatially immersive, globally diverse, but at its core, it is still driven by that same relentless beat.
It changes its skin, but the skeleton stays the same.
Exactly.
Now, before we let everyone go back to their own reality, you usually have something for them to chew on. What's the provocative thought for this deep dive?
Well, the source says techno is the sound of the relationship between humans and technology.
Yeah.
So here's my question. As AI becomes more and more integrated into our lives, managing our schedules, driving our cars, optimizing everything, will the sound of techno change to reflect that?
How do you mean?
Well, will the music become more chaotic and glitchy to reflect the stress of that hyper-optimized life? Or will it become more structured, more hypnotic, more orderly to provide an escape from it? Do we want the music to mirror our chaos, or do we want it to cure it?
That is a good one. Is the club a mirror or a sanctuary? I guess we'll just have to wait and listen. We want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into 786Muzik's documentary series. It's been a wild ride into 2026.
It certainly has.
And we'll sign off with the motto from the source material itself, which I think is a pretty good rule for life.
The vibe is the only rule.
See you next time.